There is a country in Europe that hasn't fought a war in over 500 years. A country so small you could fit it 4 times inside the state of Wisconsin. And yet it has more money per person than the United States, Germany, Japan, or just about any nation you can name. A country where the trains run on a margin of error measured in seconds. Where the chocolate you eat anywhere in the world was invented, and where, this is the part you're going to have trouble believing, underneath almost every apartment building there is a nuclear bunker, built by law, ready to shelter the entire population if disaster ever came. That country is Switzerland. And the incredible part isn't that it's rich, the incredible part is how it got rich, by doing almost the exact opposite of what every other country in the world did. Today we're counting down the 10 most fascinating facts about real life in Switzerland, from number 10 to number 1. So warn you now, fact number 2 is so unsettling and so hard to believe that most people, the first time they hear it, assume it's an exaggeration. It isn't, but we'll get there. Stick around to the end. And if you love discovering how people actually live in the most surprising places on Earth, subscribe now so you don't miss a single documentary on this channel. Fact 10. 4 languages, 1 nation. Let's start with something that sounds impossible, but in Switzerland is just an ordinary Tuesday. Imagine that in the United States, depending on which city you lived in, you wouldn't just speak English, you might speak German, French, or Italian, and every government document, every road sign, every contract, every news broadcast existed in all of those languages at the same time. In most countries, that's a recipe for political chaos, ethnic conflict, one region trying to break away from another. But Switzerland has run this way for centuries, and it has done it with a level of peace that borders on the absurd. Switzerland has 4 official languages. German, spoken by the majority, around 63% of the population, French in the western region, around 23%, Italian in the south, especially in the canton of Ticino, around 8%, and Romansh, an ancient language descended from Latin, spoken today by only a few tens of thousands of people in the valleys of the canton of Graubünden in the east. But here's what makes it genuinely fascinating. It isn't just that 4 languages exist, it's that each region has a completely different personality that goes far beyond vocabulary. German-speaking Swiss are known for a punctuality that borders on obsessive. Order, pragmatism. If you agree to meet a German-speaking Swiss person at 3 p.m. and you arrive at 3:03, you're already late. That's not a joke. That's the actual culture. Cross into the French-speaking side, toward Geneva or Lausanne, and the whole atmosphere shifts. People are more relaxed, more willing to strike up a conversation with a stranger, closer to the French philosophy that life is meant to be enjoyed. And if you head south into Ticino, you feel like you're in Italy, palm trees next to the Alps, espresso bars, risotto, evenings that stretch out over conversation and good food. The Swiss even have a funny name for the divide between the German and French sides. They call it the Röstigraben, which literally means the rusty ditch. Rusty is a fried, shredded potato dish that's a staple in the German-speaking region and that French speakers barely touch. So the most famous cultural border in the country isn't named after a war or a treaty, it's named after a potato dish, only in Switzerland. And how does a nation like that stay together? With something we'll get to later in this documentary, a political system radically different from any other country on Earth, one that hands power directly to ordinary citizens in a way nowhere else does. But that comes later. Let's keep going. Fact 9. Chocolate as a religion. When someone says Swiss quality, everybody instantly knows what that means. Switzerland became a global synonym for precision and excellence in a lot of industries, but few are as famous with the general public as its chocolate. And the real numbers go far beyond the tourist cliché. In 2024, Switzerland's 17 major chocolate factories produced more than 209,000 tons of chocolate, and 72% of that production was exported to 149 countries around the world. Switzerland is one of the planet's biggest chocolate exporters by value, even though Germany and Belgium beat it on volume. The difference is price. Swiss chocolate exports at an average value of nearly $9,000 per ton, which puts it in a luxury category within the global market. But the number that really drops jaws isn't the export figure, it's domestic consumption. The Swiss are the biggest per capita chocolate consumers on Earth. On average, every single resident of Switzerland eats around 10.6 kilograms of chocolate per year. That's over 23 pounds. To put that in perspective, the average American eats a little over 9 pounds a year. A Swiss person eats more than double that. In Switzerland, chocolate isn't a treat or a gift. It's part of the daily diet. So why did Switzerland become the chocolate capital of the world? The story starts in the 19th century, when Swiss chocolatiers like François, Louis Caillé, Daniel Peter, and Henri Nestlé, yes, that Nestlé, developed techniques that changed chocolate forever. Daniel Peter was the first to add condensed milk to solid chocolate, creating milk chocolate as we know it today. That happened in 1875, in the canton of Vaud. Before that, chocolate was bitter, gritty, and mostly consumed as a drink. Peter turned it into one of the most consumed products on the planet. And here's the detail almost nobody knows. That same Henri Nestlé, who collaborated with Peter on those experiments, is the founder of Nestlé, today the largest food company on Earth, still headquartered in Switzerland, in the town of Vevey, on the shores of Lake Geneva. So the next time you pick up any Nestlé product, milk, coffee, cereal, bottled water, you're touching the legacy of a 19th century Swiss guy who was obsessed with milk and cocoa. Fact 8. Few watches, enormous money. There's something the Swiss dominate with a precision that goes well past metaphor, making watches. And the 2024 numbers look contradictory at first glance, until you realize they explain the entire Swiss mindset. China exported 595 million watches in 2024. Switzerland exported about 15 million. China sold roughly 39 times more watches by unit count. But Switzerland brought in close to $30 billion in watch exports that same year, while China brought in about $5 billion for all 595 million of its pieces. Do the math, and the average exported Swiss watch carries a value of roughly $1,900. The average Chinese watch around $8. The Swiss watch industry doesn't compete on volume, it competes on value, and in that game it has no rival. How did Switzerland end up owning luxury watchmaking? The story is older and stranger than most people imagine. In the 1500s, the Huguenots, Protestants being persecuted in France, fled to Geneva, bringing refined craft skills with them. Geneva's Calvinist church, extremely strict about anything resembling ostentation, banned the wearing of jewelry and personal ornament. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for 2 reasons. Migrated into an alternative industry, precision watchmaking. So a religious sumptuary law from the 1500s ended up being one of the founding factors of Switzerland's most profitable industry 400 years later. History has that kind of plot twist in it. Today, names like Rolex, Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, IWC and Breitling carry the same weight in the watch world that Ferrari and Lamborghini carry in cars. Every one of them is Swiss. There's even a law in Switzerland, the Swiss-made ordinance, that defines with surgical precision exactly what conditions a watch must meet before it's allowed to print those 2 words on its dial. It isn't a marketing label. It's a legally protected guarantee worth billions of dollars a year in commercial reputation. So, would you wear a $1,900 watch, or would you rather have the $8 one? Tell me in the comments. And if you're enjoying what you're learning about Switzerland, hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel. Fact 7. The most innovative country on Earth. This is one of those claims that sounds like marketing hype until you check where it comes from. The Global Innovation Index is compiled every year by the World Intellectual Property Organization, the United Nations agency that governs patents and intellectual property worldwide. It is, in other words, the most serious measurement in existence of a country's innovative capacity. Switzerland topped that ranking in 2025 with a score of 66, and it has topped it for 15 consecutive years. 15 years isn't a good run. That's a structural pattern. Why does a country this small innovate this much? With barely 9 million people, fewer than live in New York City, it holds more patents per capita than almost any nation on the planet. The explanation has layers. First, the universities. The Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, known as ETH Zurich, is consistently ranked among the 10 best technical universities in the world, the European equivalent of MIT. 21 Nobel Prize winners came out of it, including Albert Einstein, who studied there between 1896 and 1900. Second, research spending. Switzerland puts roughly 3.5% of its entire GDP into research and development, one of the highest rates in the world. But maybe the most interesting piece is the concentration of pharmaceutical and scientific companies. In the city of Basel, tucked into the far northwest corner of the country, on the border with Germany and France, you'll find two of the most important pharmaceutical companies on Earth, Roche and Novartis. Both are headquartered there, and between them they employ tens of thousands of people in Switzerland alone. Novartis, born from the 1996 merger of Ciba-Geigy and Sandoz, two Swiss giants, is one of the 5 biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. Roche is Europe's most valuable by market capitalization. Medicines that save millions of lives in hospitals around the world today, from cancer treatments to antivirals, were developed in Swiss laboratories. And Switzerland's political neutrality played a decisive historical role in all of this. During both world wars, while the chemical and pharmaceutical industries of Germany, France, and Italy were being destroyed or converted to war production, Swiss companies just kept operating normally, exporting to every side of the conflict and building global commercial relationships their European competitors lost forever. Peace became a competitive advantage. Fact 6. The people rule directly. Here comes something that sounds like a utopian fantasy almost anywhere else. In Switzerland, any ordinary citizen can amend the constitution or overturn a law passed by parliament. That isn't a poetic phrase or an exaggeration. It's how the Swiss political system works day to day, and it has a name: direct democracy. Here's the mechanism. If a group of citizens collects 100,000 signatures within 18 months, they can put any proposed constitutional change to a national vote. If they collect 50,000 signatures within 100 days, they can force a referendum to reject any law Parliament has just passed. These votes happen several times a year, and citizen participation has been part of the culture for more than 150 years. The things the Swiss have voted on directly include topics that would be unthinkable elsewhere: whether or not to build new highways, whether to accept or reject certain types of nuclear energy, whether to raise the minimum wage, whether to overhaul the pension system. In 2024, the Swiss voted in a referendum to establish a 13th month of state pension, an extra month of retirement income every year, and the proposal was approved by the citizens themselves, directly. This system makes Swiss politics radically different from what we're used to. Politicians in Switzerland can't simply pass what they want and then wait 4 years until the next election. Any significant law can be challenged within weeks by any organized group of citizens. That produces a more cautious kind of politics, more negotiated, more oriented toward consensus. And who actually governs Switzerland? This is another oddity worth mentioning. Switzerland doesn't have a powerful president with broad executive authority. Executive power sits with a federal council of 7 ministers, elected by parliament, who make decisions collectively. Each year, one of those 7 takes the title of President of the Confederation, but it's essentially a ceremonial role on rotation. The Swiss head of state today is someone most Swiss people would struggle to name in casual conversation. And in Switzerland, that's considered a sign the system is working properly. Fact 5. Brutally expensive, brilliantly paid. Here's a reality the Swiss live with in a daily mix of pride and resignation. Switzerland is consistently one of the most expensive countries on the planet to live in. In 2026, the cost of living in Switzerland runs on average 66% higher than in the United States. According to Numbeo data, in Zurich, the country's largest city, a one-bedroom apartment rents for around $3,000 a month. A coffee in Geneva costs about $6. A burger at an ordinary restaurant can easily run $25. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for two reasons. A family of four needs more than 5,100 Swiss francs a month, roughly 5,500 Swiss francs a month, roughly 5,500 Swiss francs a month. So how does anyone survive at those prices? With salaries on an entirely different level. The average gross salary in Switzerland in 2024 was about 6,700 Swiss francs a month, more than $7,500. The median full-time American worker earns closer to $5,000 a month, so the average Swiss worker takes home roughly 50% more per month than the typical American, in a country where the currency is one of the strongest on earth. It isn't that the Swiss are smarter or harder working, it's that their economy is structured in a completely different way. Extremely high productivity, specialization in high-value sectors, pharmaceuticals, watches, banking, chemicals, technology, and a system that took centuries to build. What should be said honestly is that this wealth isn't perfectly evenly spread. Switzerland has a Gini coefficient of about 31, where 0 is perfect equality and 100 is perfect inequality, which is moderate by global standards, but it does mean there are Swiss people living tight, especially recent immigrants, service workers, and people in big cities. Around 8.4% of the population lives in relative poverty, even in one of the richest countries on earth. Average wealth masks real differences. But even with those gaps, the general standard of living is extraordinary. Life expectancy in Switzerland is 83.8 years, among the highest anywhere. The healthcare system, expensive for the user, since every Swiss resident pays for mandatory private insurance, is world-class, and Numbeo's Quality of Life Index placed Switzerland 5th in the world in 2026, with standout scores in purchasing power, safety, and climate. It's an expensive country to live in. It's also one where living well is more achievable than almost anywhere else. Fact 4. 500 years without a war. Now let's talk about something that sounds naive from the outside, but has in practice been the single most valuable geopolitical asset any nation has held in the last 5 centuries: Swiss armed neutrality. Switzerland has not taken part in an international war since 1515, when it was defeated at the Battle of Marignano against France and Venice. That defeat was so decisive that the Swiss collectively concluded the war business wasn't for them, and that staying out of other people's conflicts was the smarter play. Since then, Swiss neutrality was formally recognized by the great European powers at the Congress of Vienna in 1815, and it has held through 2 world wars, the Cold War and every geopolitical crisis since. This gave Switzerland something extraordinary. Throughout the First and Second World Wars, while the rest of Europe burned, Switzerland kept producing, exporting, attracting capital, developing technology, and accumulating wealth. Its banks became a refuge for money from every side of the conflict. Its pharmaceutical companies could sell medicine to Germans, French, and British simultaneously. Its factories kept running while its neighbours were rubble or retooled for weapons. It's important to be honest here. That neutrality also had a dark side. During the Second World War, Swiss banks held money and assets stolen by the Nazi regime from Jewish families and other persecuted people. That was acknowledged and partially compensated decades later, but it remains an uncomfortable part of the neutrality story. No position of advantage comes entirely clean, and Switzerland was no exception. Today, neutrality is still fundamental to Swiss identity. Switzerland is not a member of NATO, nor of the European Union, despite sharing borders with 4 EU countries: France, Germany, Austria, and Italy. What it is the headquarters of hundreds of international organizations. The International Committee of the Red Cross, founded by the Swiss businessman Henry Dunant in 1863, the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, and major UN offices in Geneva, making that city one of the most important diplomatic centers on the planet. Fact 3. The most staggering income number in the world. We've arrived at one of the most brutal numbers in this documentary, and it's brutally simple. Switzerland's income per capita in 2025 was roughly $116,000 per person per year. That puts it among the top 3 countries on Earth by nominal income per resident, and well above the United States, which sits closer to $89,000. To make that concrete, GDP per capita in the United Kingdom is around $52,000, in Canada around $54,000, in Australia around $65,000. Switzerland generates in a single working week what a lot of wealthy countries take a month to produce. And how did a country this small, with no oil, no significant natural resources, no coastline, ringed by mountains, get there? The answer is a combination of everything we've been looking at. Political neutrality that let it accumulate capital through centuries of European war. A banking system that attracted wealth from all over the world. Industries with enormous value density. Pharmaceuticals, watchmaking, finance. An education system that produces constant innovation. And a culture of work, precision, and institutional trust that means contracts get honored, trains arrive on time, and invested money actually returns. Switzerland's total GDP passed $1 trillion in 2025, roughly what Sweden and Norway produce combined, and more than the entire economy of Saudi Arabia. All of it generated by 9 million people living on a territory slightly larger than the state of Maryland. The Swiss economy is the 21st largest in the world by total size, but 3rd in the world by wealth per person. That gap between absolute size and per capita wealth is the most precise summary of what Switzerland actually is. Not the biggest giant, the most efficient one. Fact 2. A nuclear bunker for every single citizen. This is the one I promised you at the start. The one most people don't believe the first time they hear it. Pay close attention, because every word here is verified. In Switzerland, underneath most residential buildings, there is a nuclear bunker. That's not a metaphor, that's not an exaggeration. It is a legal reality, established by law since 1963. Let me explain how Switzerland got here. At the height of the Cold War, with the nuclear threat between the United States and the Soviet Union at its peak, the Swiss government made a decision no other Western country made in quite the same way, to legally guarantee every single resident of the country a place in a nuclear shelter within walking distance of their home. The Civil Defense Act of 1963 requires that every new residential building either include a shelter capable of protecting its occupants or pay a financial contribution into the public shelter fund. The result? Switzerland today has approximately 370,000 private and public nuclear shelters, with a combined capacity of around 9 million protected spaces. The current population of Switzerland is 8.9 million people, which means there is a bunker spot for every single Swiss person, with a few left over for tourists. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for 2 reasons. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for 2 reasons. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for 2 reasons. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for 2 reasons. They're designed to keep their occupants alive for at least 2 weeks in the event of a nuclear strike, a chemical attack, or a large-scale disaster, and they're inspected and updated regularly by government mandate. For comparison, Germany has shelter coverage for around 3% of its population. Austria covers roughly 30%, though with older facilities. Norway actually repealed its shelter law in 1998, treating it as a relic of another era. Switzerland not only didn't repeal it, it keeps building and upgrading the network. And here's a detail that makes this even more Swiss than it already is. Most people use their bunker as a storage room, a wine cellar, an extra closet. It's a functional part of the house that in an emergency can be converted into a shelter in a matter of hours. That everyday coexistence of the mundane and the apocalyptic, condensed into a concrete room under the floor of an ordinary apartment building, is maybe the most perfect image of how Switzerland thinks, prepared for the best, and quietly also for the worst. Would you sleep fine knowing there's a nuclear bunker under your house, or would you find that unsettling? Drop your answer in the comments. I read all of them. Fact 1. Rich without anyone watching. And we've reached number 1. The fact that, in my opinion, reveals more than anything else we've covered today. Switzerland is by nearly every measurable standard the most successful country in the world, among the highest income per capita on earth, the most innovation per resident, a direct democracy that actually functions, a life expectancy of nearly 84 years, trains that arrive to the second, a banking system managing fortunes from every corner of the planet, companies like Nestlé, Rolex, Novartis, and Roche that lead their industries globally. And yet Switzerland has one of the lowest international profiles of any developed nation. It projects no military power, it has no army intervening in foreign conflicts, it doesn't chase geopolitical influence, it never colonized anyone, it has nothing like the media presence of the United States, France, or the United Kingdom. The paradox is this: Switzerland became extraordinarily rich, powerful, and influential by doing the exact opposite of what rich and powerful countries usually do.